Okay, today's lesson is to review solving equations. We're going to focus on one-step and two-step equations today. The papers you're going to need, this half sheet of paper has a couple examples we're going to do together. You will also need this foldable note sheet, which is in the bin next to it, and this has a lot of examples that you're going to go down through and practice. You'll also need this answer bank that goes along with these practice questions that you're going to do. So we'll talk about this in a little bit. First thing we're going to do today is we're going to take a look at filling in the note sheet. The note sheet starts out talking about when you're solving, your main goal is to get the variable by itself. The variable, remember, is your letter. So the first equation we have x, the second equation we have x, so x is a very common letter to be working with, and that's the goal, get the variable by itself. The next step is to use opposite operations. Your opposite operations is like when you're adding, the opposite would be to subtract. When you are subtracting, the opposite would be to add. And then, of course, multiplying and dividing are opposites. Later on this year, we'll work with more opposites with some higher values like squaring and square rooting and things. So, some hints to keep in mind. We call this a locker, and you draw the locker underneath your equal sign and around your equal sign because it really does look like one of your lockers out in the hallway. What this locker does is it helps you keep organized. Okay, think of a teeter-totter. When you do something to one side of the equation, you must do it to the other side. An equation is like a teeter-totter. It wants to stay balanced. So this would be like where your equal sign is. Whatever we do on this side of the teeter-totter, we want to do on the other side so that it doesn't become unbalanced. Another thing that's crucial is you have to show all your work and you have to check your answer. So the first example we have a negative 1/4 x equal to negative 3. So one way to solve for this is to just try guessing some of the numbers. If you multiply by negative 1/4, what answer would give you negative 3? The problem with guessing is it often takes you a long time. So that's why we have this process using opposite operations that helps us. This negative 1/4 is attached to the x by multiplying. So we could just divide by negative 1/4. And if we did it to one side, we would have to do it to the other side. So what's strange about dividing by negative 1/4, the answer doesn't seem to make sense to us sometimes because you're dividing by a fraction, and that fraction gives you a value that is a lot larger than you'd expect. So that's one way to solve this equation. I'm going to show you another way over here because some of you may have learned about using the reciprocal. If you multiply by the reciprocal of this fraction, that's when you flip it over. When you multiply by that negative 4/1, it makes the answer a little bit easier to understand. These would cancel out. Okay, negative times a negative is a positive x, which is what we want. And then negative 3 times negative 4 is where the 12 comes from. So either way you solve this question, we should get 12 for our answer. And then over here you should have enough room to do a really quick check. We want to make sure that negative 1/4 times our value of x really is negative 3. So you learned about verifying your solutions. This is exactly why we need to verify, because we want to know if we're right. So what this side of the equation has is just the negative 3. What this side of the equation has is a little bit of math, and yes, it does work out that both sides of that equation stay balanced. So we're good to go. For example 2, we have a slightly longer equation, but you're still going to start out using that first hint that I gave you. Draw your locker. The locker separates the two sides so we can keep them balanced. This side has the decimal 76.9. There's nothing going on there. There's a lot going on this side. So you'll notice your variable right here is stuck to the negative 5. You can't get rid of that first, okay? That operation's a little tougher to work with than this operation. We know that the variable has a positive 18.5 attached to it. So what we talked about is using opposite operations. In order to get rid of this positive 18.5, we're going to subtract. Remember we said the opposite of adding is subtracting? It's kind of like unwrapping a present. When you have to unwrap a present, usually you do so methodically in a way that you end up with a neat paper when you're done. So on this side, we have to subtract. Let's see, 76, I got to borrow 1. So that would be 8 and then 5. So 58.4 is what we have when we're subtracting. And then notice what I did on this side is I just brought down the variable with the coefficient -5 attached to it, and I also brought down the equal sign that's in the middle of that locker. And that's important because we need to be able to assess what we still have left to do. We did our first step, but we have one more step that would require us to get rid of that -5. So right now, -5, remember, is touching x. They're attached by multiplying. The opposite of multiplying is dividing. So if we're going to divide by -5, we're going to want to grab our calculator for this one. 58.4 divided by -5. It's telling us our solution is -11.68. So luckily we have an answer that's a terminating decimal. It ends with just 2 digits. And then we're going to verify our answer by going over here to the side and saying, hey, we're going to check this. So we need to know that -5 times our answer plus 18.5 really is 76.9. I'm having trouble with my mouse here. All right, so again, when you verify, you take your answer, you plug it in, is -5 times -11.68 plus 18.5, really 76.9. The only way to find out is to take this and put it in your calculator. So you can do it all together, or you can do it in 2 different steps. I'm going to put it all in. -5 times -11.68 plus 18.5. So as long as I didn't do anything wrong, I do get 76.9. And that's a balanced equation, so that means I know that we did all of our work correctly. That is the correct solution for example 2. Now, for example 3, don't let it scare you. I know it's got a couple of fractions in it, but you're going to start out the same way. You're going to draw your locker. You're going to find your variable. You know this is attached by multiplying. We'll take care of that later. Let's do the easiest operation first. Okay, to get rid of a -8, remember the opposite is just to add 8. 8 and 7 makes 15, and you still have that fraction, 15 and 1/3. On this side, we still have our 2/3 x. Sometimes I like to cross off the item that we got rid of, so we don't have to worry about it. And at this stage, you have one thing left to get the x by itself. We have this 2/3. It's attached by multiplying. So we can either divide by 2/3 right now, or we can multiply by that reciprocal that we talked about earlier. Multiplying by the reciprocal is my favorite, so that's what I'm going to go with. This is going to cancel. It's going to give you x. And then I'm going to move over to my calculator, and I'm going to show you on my screen how to put this solution in. All right, 15 ABC was at 1/3. Let's double check. Yes, 15 and 1/3, we're going to multiply by 3/2. So 15 and 1/3. See how I had to put the ABC button in there twice? And I lost my screen here. Hang on. There it is. So we need to multiply by 3/2. So again, you're going to use your ABC button again, and that's what it wants to look like on your screen if it's going to calculate the math for you with the fractions. So it looks like we get 23. So I'll come back to this screen. X equals 23. In a perfect world, this will work out. So let's see if it does. Copy down the equation, and then plug it in. So we need to know if 2/3 times 23 minus 8 really is 7 and 1/3. So let's find out. We said we had 2/3 times our answer of 23, and then the other part of it was to subtract 8. So 2/3 times 23 minus 8, you can put that all in. Yep, we got our 7 and 1/3. So we're going to say yes, this gave us 7 and 1/3, and it's balanced with the equation that said we were supposed to get 7 and 1/3. So for that note sheet, you are set. What you're going to do now is you're going to take a look at this foldable note sheet. This has got a lot of practice problems in it to help you work with the decimals and the fractions. So on the first flap, you'll notice it says use inverse operations to solve each equation. That's exactly what we were just talking about. However, these are one-step equations. So you'll see that your equation just has one number attached to your variable. So if your variable is a and there's a plus 2.6, remember you're going to do the opposite. You're going to subtract 2.6. And then in this case, we have to be careful that we're adding this correctly. You should get negative 8.4. The answer bank that I have given you should have that answer negative 8.4 for you to cross off. And that's just a way for you to check as you go along. There are fractions, so feel free to use your calculator for those. There are some multiplying and dividing one-step equations for you to try. So we'll pick this one to do together. This has a variable k, and it's attached to the 7.4 with this fraction bar. Okay, fraction bar means it's attached by dividing. So that means for this question, we have to multiply by 7.4 on both sides. So in order to get this one to work out, we need to take negative 3.1 times 7.4. So I'm getting negative 22.94. And then on your answer bank, negative 22.94 is on there. So we know we've got another one. Cross it off as you go. And then finally, on your foldable note sheet that's going to go in your notebook, you're going to see some more equations. These are going to be two-steppers. So let's see, for example, up here, if we pick this one, it's kind of hard at first to see where it is, but here's your variable. It's the letter T, so you're going to want to write that so it looks kind of more like a cursive T almost. All right, we have two items to get rid of, so we're going to save this negative 8 attached by multiplying for later. This positive 3.7 we're going to get rid of by subtracting 3.7. So negative 8t comes down, bring your equal sign down in your locker. We have to do negative 29.1 minus 3.7, so we're dealing with negative 32.8. And then we have to get rid of the negative 8. Remember, it's attached by multiplying. Guys, make sure you divide. If there's a negative number there, you need to divide by that negative number. So t, in this case, we have to divide by negative 8. We get a positive 4.1. So again, verifying the answer sheet that we really have an answer of 4.1. Cross it off. See that you can't finish all these examples. They get a little tricky down here at the bottom. And then, when you are done, hopefully you'll get to taping today, because this is what your notebook will look like when you get this taped in. Page 43, solving 1 and 2 step. Here is your first set of examples we did together, and here is your foldable note sheet that should be complete with the help of your answer bank. Good luck. See me for questions.